everyone. Good afternoon. This is Leah, and I'm here with Sabrina and the wonderful Shanna Lee. And we are so excited to interview Shanna. Thank you for your time. Shanna is just incredible. She has so many different amazing titles. Her career is really quite impressive. But probably the most spectacular is that she is a community and volunteer champion. And we want to hear and learn all about that. So tell us about your career. I know you've done a lot of different things.
I think the best way that I can sum up the job experiences that I had were always in service to public health and to communities and volunteers. The bulk of that experience I did achieve in working with the American Cancer Society. But yeah, it's always centered around empowering communities and volunteers towards identifying their needs as well as their solutions.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about the different roles that you held at the American Cancer Society?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off as a volunteer myself within the Atlanta area. I admittedly was having a difficult time getting callbacks for interviews. I was just received my master's degree and I was applying for jobs and was not having luck. It was thank you, but we've selected someone with more experience. So at that point, I decided to switch gears a little bit and look into volunteering, which I did within the Atlanta area. I went to various health fairs, community events, just to share information with the community around cancer prevention, screenings, resources that are available to those that were going in that journey of having a cancer diagnosis. So started off there, and then I had the opportunity a couple of years later to join as a staff member, where I served as a partner to all of the health facilities that treat cancer patients. So ultimately partnering with them to get a sense of what their patient needs were, whether it be around transportation or emotional support. Once those needs were identified, I was able to partner with the community and volunteers to deliver programs that would meet those needs. That was a great job, did that for a few years, and then had the opportunity to move into a leadership role where I did similar type of work, but managing a team that delivered those programs across 7 states. That was awesome because I got to get more insight into the strategic aspect of program delivery, working with volunteers and serving patients. And then from there, I had an opportunity where the American Cancer Society essentially decided to start a team. They called it the volunteer care team that would be designed to talk with potential volunteers, get them into a volunteer role, and provide training opportunities for them. So I then moved into this role to implement this team, which was pretty exciting to bring forth new volunteers that want to fight in cancer. Did that, and then ultimately came across a really cool opportunity where our organization partnered with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in looking at cancer disparities. Again, in the fight against cancer, how do we look at things like health equity to enable and have that fight back against cancer? So that was an exciting, cool partnership opportunity where we worked with staff and volunteers on that effort.
Shanna, it's just amazing. I have to disclose that Shanna was my supervisor's supervisor, and she hired me. And so she's just an incredible person. And it was somewhat unusual for somebody in the American Cancer Society to move into all these different roles. And I really think that highlights your curiosity about the world of health and volunteers and people in general. And so it's really something to be modeled. And I think it shows people that you don't have to get stuck in any specific position, that you really can look for, even in your own organization, look for different opportunities to keep learning and keep stretching yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of curious by nature on things anyway. So to your point, I didn't necessarily look at moving through the organization through hierarchy as an example to be in a leadership position, I also considered the areas of work that really just created curiosity that I had, that I felt that I can bring success to, that I felt I could work with a high functioning, talented team and work with amazing volunteers and community members in the process. So regardless of what that specific job title or role was, I kind of learned to kind of break free from that a little bit and look more at the work and what made me passionate and excited.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, especially on LinkedIn, you know, there's been a lot of career advice that it parallels that, you know, when you chase the title, when you chase the money, you're often going to be feeling unsatisfied and left looking again for another job. Can you expand upon that a little bit more? Maybe share some advice about how you did that? I mean, was there a time in your life where you did chase that title and then you took some stock and realized that wasn't working for you? Can you share a little more on that?
Yeah, well, initially, again, it really was looking at the areas that I was passionate about. So as an example, when I started off with the American Cancer Society, it was an amazing opportunity to work locally within Atlanta. But then after a while, I started looking at program delivery and thinking strategically about things, and my mind went to how can we make things better for patients and volunteers? What are great things that we're doing that we should keep doing? So then that kind of opened my mind up to strategic leadership opportunities that would be of interest. And that's how I then came into that role when that opportunity opened up. And then even from there to the volunteer care team, the fact that it was a new and innovative type of team. Prior to that, we had local staff that were training volunteers, and it was a lot of work and effort that local staff had to do. And so sometimes it caused competing priorities in terms of what a field staff needed to do. So this idea or concept of, you know, having a centralized team that lifts that up on behalf of field staff, but also in partnership with them, was something that struck my curiosity. It was new, it was different. And so I navigated in that space. And I will note that in that particular position, there was an amazing leader of that department that I had heard great insight about. And so I knew from a team culture perspective that I wanted to be a part of her team. I saw a mentorship opportunity there, which still remains to this day. And so that's a decision that, you know, has been phenomenal. And then as it relates to health equity, that was definitely a different dynamic in which, you know, this was more of a time-based position, which I wasn't accustomed to. So I was thinking about that in terms of, you know, life decisions, how I felt about job stability, but ultimately I was so passionate about the work of how can we empower communities when they face barriers to cancer screenings and treatments. When you hear the stories direct from volunteers, patients, and caregivers saying that they may have to make choices between rent or getting a mammography or having insurance or not having insurance and quality of care. As I started to hear those stories and then the opportunity emerged to work on health equity and how the organization could be more thoughtful about that, it drew me to it. And I was okay with the dynamics of that job because I felt passionate about this work and the people that would be involved. So again, it really just, you know, things that were of interest. And I also credit having amazing managers that also empowered me, and they would have proactive conversations around my career interests.
Someone like yourself, who I know was very sought after for different roles at the American Cancer Society because you're such a strong leader and you really know how to bring people together. It's really interesting to hear that you also took the time to evaluate who your leaders would be and maybe take a position because you would have a strong leader who would push you, mentor you, those kinds of things.
It's really about, you know, how I can do my best to support and cheer on someone to be the best version of themselves. So.
That's
Wonderful.
amazing. Well, and it sounds like you have brought so much joy to other people. And you just said it yourself. You're like, I've been a cheerleader for so many people. And, I have not had the pleasure of getting to know you in person. This is our first, interaction virtually. But I cannot tell you, it's so weird. Energetically, I can just feel this like radiance and brightness just like flowing through, the airwaves or whatever, however it's being transmitted. I'm not an IT person, but it's just incredible. And I think one word that kept coming up in my mind was resourcefulness. You have overcome so many different, I don't know, challenges or whatever, like talking about your master's degree and looking at job prospects, just the initiative where you said, I'm putting myself out there. I'm looking for, positions that I feel passionately about, but things just aren't working out right now. And so I'm going to do something that brings me joy and that I have control over. What brings you joy in the work that you have done?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you actually touching on resourcefulness because it plays into my response. What brings me joy is when you have groups or teams or communities, volunteers coming together. Everyone is showing up as an expert and a learner. Everyone has a superpower. So we all can, lend insight into a problem, but we can also learn from it. And so I get excited when an environment's about that versus the pressure of having to figure out the solution yourself. And honestly, that's, I thrive off of, those collaborative solutions and partnerships that come into play because you really get to see people shine in their own way. And it's always neat to be involved in efforts that have that environment at play.
And I think it kind of goes along with the fact that like you do offer that sort of mentorship, and through the lens in which you look at your career and your life, you are able to see those people with their innate talents and maybe be able to, that must be a superpower of yours to be able to see that and to be able to harness that and get people to work together for the best, like the good of other people and driving something home that's really important for our communities and society at large. So thank you so much for that. And I don't know if I want to keep using the word resourcefulness, but when has been a time or a part of your career where you maybe had to be the most resourceful, or maybe there's been a challenging part of your journey?
Well, I would say to resourcefulness, I'll say in the job searching interview world. We'll use that as an example in terms of how do you show yourself to an employer that you're a strong candidate that should be considered. And I went through learning a lot of tips and things. And I really learned not to block myself from an opportunity, I think was the biggest lesson. All too often I would be intrigued by postings and think to myself, well, maybe I don't qualify. Maybe it's in a different industry or a sector. And then that's where I started getting the recognition around transferable skills and taking a deeper dive, as an example, into a job description, and then thinking about my previous experience and success and how to adapt your resume for that. That does take effort. Sometimes we would love to just shoot that standard resume, but oftentimes when there's thoughtfulness and thinking about your experience and translating that, it can catch the eye of an HR department or a team. And so that's been helpful. And then just being yourself when there is the opportunity to have an interview. I know sometimes it can be, a little stressful and nerve-wracking, but, people responded because they were interested. And so, they want to learn more. So the more I started thinking about that in terms of a conversation, it also relieved the pressure in terms of that job searching and things of that nature.
Thank you so much. This has been so eye-opening and has resonated with me on so many different levels. Leah, I know we're both just like, I feel like dancing in my seat here. And I hope that, for all the viewers out there, that you have connected with Shanna's message as well. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to see more. And we will be actually doing a 2 tips in 2 minutes with Shanna. So also check that out. I'll post a link to that video at the end of this one.